You're skirting around the issue. So you have to admit to yourself where your shortcomings are in step number one. In this step, we must fully admit, admission, access, entry point. Admit the truth of our current state of being without reservations or excuses. You make no excuses in this step. You are failing at this step if you attempt to make excuses. So you fully admit the truth of your current state of being, your current state of consciousness, without reservations or excuses, so that we can make an accurate diagnosis regarding the course of action that must be taken to change that condition for the better. If you're not honest, if you lie to yourself in the first stage, you can't make the correct diagnosis in the second stage, and then you're not going to be able to take right action in the third. So if any part of the process goes awry, you're going to fail. You have to do it in the correct order, with the correct intentions, and full, absolutely blatant honesty. Brutal honesty. Okay? So this is step one. And here's the quote on this page. Today I acknowledge my wrongs because I understand that in order to not repeat them, I must take full responsibility for them. Today I acknowledge my wrongs. This is the acknowledgement step of the shadow work process, the triple A shadow work process. Today I acknowledge my wrongs because I understand that in order to not repeat my wrongs, I must take full responsibility for them. Full, honest responsibility for your shortcomings and inadequacies. Acknowledgement is almost certainly the most difficult stage of the shadow work process. Almost certainly. Now, that's not to say that the others aren't. Right? Fully understanding what must be done, making a diagnosis, actually doing the actions, very difficult. But most people never even get to steps 2 or 3 because they never undertake step 1, acknowledging their wrongness, their shortcomings, their inadequacies. They don't even want to look at those things in themselves, let alone fully acknowledge them and fully be honest about them. So, this stage is the most difficult because it involves brutal honesty with oneself. This stage of shadow work can only be accomplished by fully telling the unfiltered truth about ourselves and our own behavior. This is done by looking at your own reflection in the mirror that we talked about and speaking aloud, not in your mind, aloud in the room so that your voice reaches your ears. You are saying this right into your own ears and into your own mind. You're not silent during shadow work. You say it aloud. That's the best practice. Okay? You look at your own reflection and you speak aloud true statements about your current state of being, and you ask hard questions about your current state of being. All true statements of acknowledgement begin with the phrase, "It is true that I, dot, dot, dot." Whatever comes after that, we can look at many examples of, and we will. But all statements of acknowledgement, okay, start with the phrase, "It is true that I," and then you make a statement about yourself, about your inadequacies, fears, wrongdoings, transgressions against others, shortcomings, etc. Okay? So let's look at this and flesh this process out further. There are zero excuses allowed during the step of acknowledgement. You do not try to present because I did this because, well, it happened because this or that. No excuses. You present it without reservation or excuses. You're not here to explain all of the technicalities of why something occurred. Okay? That's not part of this step. If you get bogged down in talking about the because, the why, the excuses, you don't get it. You're not getting, you're not grokking this stage of the process. Okay? And again, people hate hearing this because they're like, oh, well, there's reasons. We're not here to talk about the reasons. We're here to talk about the manifestation of what occurred. That's it, nothing else. Period. The facts, the knowledge, nothing else. It is critically important to not attempt to make any excuses whatsoever during this stage of shadow work. Do not offer any reasons, qualifications, or caveats. Do not lay blame upon others during this stage. Even if things were influenced by others in certain ways, you don't lay blame on it. You're not here in this stage to. I didn't sit there in the acknowledgement of when I was coming out of Satanism saying, oh, these people wrote these books with all these lies in it, and I read it, and it's because of them. All I said was, I was deceived. I allowed that deception to happen. My spiritual weakness allowed it. That's it. The end. My responsibility as an adult. That's it. No excuses. Just tell the truth about the ways that you have fallen short of being a better version of yourself. Don't say I did this because ... Don't do that. Drop that. Get that out of your mind. Eliminate that from your vocabulary. Making excuses or trying to explain reasons why you previously chose poor behavior will only lessen the power and effectiveness of your acknowledgement in the moment that you are doing this shadow work process. You want maximum power, you want maximum effectiveness. Just say what is the truth. Just say what happened. What happened? Just say how you fell short. That's it. Just say what your transgression was. It is true that I don't always have patience with people. That is something that I must work on. That's it. That's it. Don't make excuses. There's a billion excuses. There's a billion reasons, obviously. That's not part of this process. You're entering some other field of endeavor where you want to understand more about why certain people behave certain ways. That's not shadow work. Shadow work is about you and your shortcomings and your inadequacies. That's it. Just tell the truth, brutally honest. Okay? In the acknowledgement stage, you have to present yourself very difficult questions that are going to lead to proper acknowledgments. So you're going to ask yourself, what am I like in this regard? How am I doing in this other field of my internal aspects of my personality? And then you answer the question 100% sincerely and honestly with no excuses. During the acknowledgement step of shadow work, we must ask ourselves some of the most difficult questions we will ever endeavor to truthfully answer in our lives. These questions delve into the core of our essence as a human being, and these questions allow us, if we are being honest with ourselves, to admit our shortcomings and inadequacies so that they may be confronted and improved. We will explore some of these difficult questions and the types of acknowledgments to which they lead us. So you're going to ask questions about yourself, and then you have to just brutally and honestly answer those questions without excuses. So we're going to go into some of the questions. Then we'll go into what comprises good acknowledgement statements during shadow work, during the actual method. Here's one of the first questions I think people should ask themselves in the shadow work method. In the process of actually doing this work, sitting down in front of a mirror, asking yourself difficult questions, and saying what the truth is regarding it. So the questions will lead to the acknowledgement. So we present the question and then we answer the question. So let's look at how one of these works, and then we'll see many more examples. A critical dynamic in shadow work is to reevaluate our worldview, as we already talked about, and to discover the extent that our worldview may have been poisoned by others in our lives who we naively trusted in our past. So the people that we may have naively trusted could be our parents, our family members, our friends, our teachers, clergy, work peers, the media, and many others who we formerly viewed as trusted and reliable sources of information and advice. And we had a whole slide where we talked about that in part 1. So once we ask ourselves this question, has my worldview been poisoned by those who I previously naively trusted? And you're going to answer it honestly. Yes, it is true. So here's a good example of an effective acknowledgement regarding this particular dynamic during shadow work. You look in the mirror. Have I allowed my worldview to be poisoned and turned dark, negative, and false by those who I have previously and sadly, naively trusted in my past? Yes, it is true that I have allowed my parents, via their religious beliefs, to poison my worldview regarding human nature and human potential. It is true that I listened to the media and I bought all the hype and the absolutely unfounded fears, and then acted as a tyrant against other people during COVID when I didn't understand those factors at all truly, and I just acted out of ignorance. That's it. Total acknowledgement. And it doesn't matter what dynamic this entails. You're going to present the question about the dynamic, you're going to look in the mirror, and you're going to answer the question honestly. And again, all good affirmations, all true, good, positive, powerful affirmations start with, it is true that I have done this. That's it. Say it to the universe and to yourself. It is true. I have acted this way, and I know better. I should know better, and I did that anyway. That's it. That's it. No excuses proffered or offered. None. That's one of the hardest things any human being could ever do, because what you're basically saying is, I was wrong. I have failed. I have been inadequate. I have acted improperly. No one wants to sit and say this to themselves, let alone to anybody else. But guess what? You'll continue to lie to yourself, and you'll continue to lie to other people, and you'll continue to do the same shortcomings and inadequacies until you acknowledge this to yourself. That's why acknowledgement is the very first step of all shadow work. So, as on a theme, all throughout today, worldview has to be healed first, ladies and gentlemen. If you do not heal worldview, you are not doing any further healing. Get over it. True and blanket statement, worldview must be healed first. And that means understanding true human nature as programmable. That means understanding that positive change is absolutely possible. That means understanding false ideas have been programmed into us, and it's our responsibility to deprogram from them and then change our programming and turn it for the better so that we can then align ourselves with truth and natural law. Let's continue. Some more questions that will lead to a proper and correct acknowledgement. Have I acted on bad advice from those who I previously naively trusted? Because how many of us have done that? We've gotten bad advice. We think it's coming from a trusted person who is concerned for us and our best interests, and they may even have that. They're just not very intelligent when it comes to what really needs to be done. They haven't made a correct diagnosis. So we have to address that as well, but you still don't make excuses in your acknowledgement. So here's how this process works. Many times, people we care about or trust give us bad or even terrible advice. They also sometimes give us completely incorrect evaluations of ourselves, our abilities, and our potential, telling us, oh, again, like I said, that's not for you. Oh, you're not suited to this. You'll never make that work. You'll never be successful in this. Later realizing that they were completely wrong regarding such things does not mean that you cease to care about them. So just because your parent may have given you horrific life advice and you went down a path that was completely painful and destructive, does not mean you have to hate your parent. But you shouldn't put them up on a pedestal and say, oh, they did the best that they can, because they didn't do the best that they could, because they didn't bother trying to be right. They just went with whatever was told to them and then repeated the process by telling it to you. So it's not like you have to vehemently hate them, but you don't put them up on a pedestal and go, my parents could do no wrong. They were some of the greatest people that ever lived. Most people's parents are fucking dumbasses. Let's just face it and say it out how it is, street language wise. Most people's parents are dumb as a sack of horse shit. Okay? That's because most parenting in the world is garbage. Otherwise, the world wouldn't be the garbage that it is. If we had great parents, all of us, we'd be great people, and the world would be a great place. The world is the way that it is because of fucking bad parenting. And if you can't acknowledge that to yourself, you're not really doing shadow work. That doesn't mean you have to hate your mother or father. You could perhaps even pity them that they got terrible life advice and information programmed into them. So, realizing that you got wrong advice and got led down the garden path doesn't mean you cease to care about those people. It does, however, mean that you should not listen to or act upon their bad advice or evaluations. And you have to realize, wow, this is a person giving terrible evals about me and my life and choices and potential, and they're really not qualified to even speak on this. Okay? So sometimes you can listen to advice if it's come from a really good place and a place of knowledge, and sometimes you have to realize this is pure shit. And you need discernment to do that, which comes with life experience and delving into these dynamics of psychology. A good acknowledgement regarding this dynamic is, it is true that I have based my life path upon the terrible advice of my parents, who were awful at evaluating my true potential. I chose unwisely to listen to them, and I have suffered because of my decision to do so. You see how the onus is not placed on the parent. You're just saying what they did, but you're saying it was your responsibility. You listened to bad advice. You took bad advice. They don't have to be a deceiver. They could just be totally fucking wrong. But you're the one who listened to and acted upon the bad advice instead of doing enough research on your own and coming to a correct conclusion. You just didn't want to do that work, and so you wanted to take advice from somebody you think knows better than you, and they know complete shit. And sorry to just burst your bubble and say it that way, but that's just the way that it is. So that's how you do a proper acknowledgement regarding, I took advice from people I thought had their act together and cared about me, and they didn't really know shit. But it's my responsibility because I acted upon that advice. You don't make excuses. You took the advice and acted upon it. Another question you'd have to sincerely pose and then sincerely and honestly answer is, have I remained ignorant regarding matters of true importance in life? How many people have not really focused on the right things in life? Ignorance is the very first in all the occult traditions of the four primary destroyers of human consciousness. Remaining in ignorance of matters of true importance in the world, like what's going on with human freedom, like what's going on with the manipulation of people's minds, like what's going on with the degradation of people's true morality, how they're moving away from what true morality is, not religious bullshit morality. But they don't really understand that all authority and government are forms of enslavement and immorality and violence and coercion and usurpation of free will. So if you have remained ignorant of those things, you're propagating ignorance out into the world. So if you remaining in ignorance of matters of true importance regarding human freedom and the overall human condition is what ultimately perpetuates the state of human slavery and injustice which prevails in our world. Here is an example of a proper acknowledgement regarding one's own ignorance. Very simple. Here it is. You ask that question, Have I remained ignorant of things that I really should have understood? And you say, yeah, it is true that I have been ignorant regarding true morality. I haven't bothered to make that a part of my life and to study it from an objective perspective. I've just listened to what some absolutely brain dead clergy member told me about what morality is in some cultural religious belief system that I shouldn't have trusted. But I went off and listened to that naively because you know why? It's easier. I don't have to do my own work and my own introspection. It's way easier to just take some other idiot's word for it. That's acknowledgement, folks. That's how it works. You just say what's true regarding what you have done and your failure and your shortcoming. And you do not make any excuses or qualifications. You just say what you've done. That's it. I'm not sitting there going, oh man, the guy who wrote these articles in this magazine that I read just completely swayed my belief system towards Satanism, and it's all his fault, man. No. I bought into false ideology. I became a worse person because of it. I wasn't concerned with matters of real importance in the world. I'm not paying attention to tyranny and enslavement and the destruction of human freedom. That's my shortcoming. Doesn't matter what anybody else did. People loathe this idea. In many cases, they want to murder the person that wants them to acknowledge things like that. That not only don't they want to do it, they would go into a killing frenzy. I'll complete this slide on the other side of the dinner break and then continue. Do I have enough information for a true understanding? Have I gathered the grammar? Or have I not gathered enough grammar that I'm still going to remain confused? We'll continue with this on the other side of the dinner break. Okay, so our break will be 4:30 to 6. Am I correct about this? Yes, 4:30 to 6. Hold on. Let me just check. 4:30 to 6. So I will begin precisely again at 6 p.m. Hopefully people have cleared up some of the tech issues if possible. Okay, but an hour and a half break. We'll be back here precisely at 6 p.m. for session 3. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you at 6. Okay, we are back. Hope that you are refreshed after the dinner break. I'm going to continue where I left off. We were talking about the first actual technique of shadow work in the AAA methodology, which is acknowledgement, the acknowledgement of shortcomings and inadequacies, and asking difficult questions to arrive at an understanding of what needs to be acknowledged. So we ended with, do you actually have enough information? Have you gathered enough knowledge for an accurate understanding of the situation? A question directly related to ignorance, one of the destroyers of human consciousness and freedom, that one must ask themselves during shadow work is, have I truly gathered enough information before coming to a conclusion regarding significant matters? We often attempt to take the steps of the trivium out of sequence by putting action before knowledge and understanding. Not gathering enough knowledge first means that we are invariably acting out of confusion, which leads to chaotic results in life. An example of acknowledgement of this dynamic would be, it is true that I have not gathered enough information regarding something like proper nutrition, and that is the main factor which has led to my health problems. Again, if you're going to use shadow work for any form of self-improvement, asking a question like, have you actually gathered enough of the grammar, enough of the knowledge needed to solve a problem, is one of the things that's going to lead you to a correct acknowledgement of your shortcomings. So this is one example in that regard. One of the other destroyers of freedom is apathy. And this is a very important question that needs to be asked while doing the acknowledgement step of shadow work. Do you care enough? So you have to pose the question, do I care enough? Not do I care at all, do I care enough? So apathy is the second great destroyer of human consciousness. It has been said that the statement, I don't care, creates a prison for all of us. In the first stage of shadow work, we must ask ourselves difficult questions such as, have I cared enough to get directly involved in the great work of ending human slavery on Earth? Again, have I cared enough? Or have I cared enough about matters of true importance? Or have I focused on selfishness and trivialities? Have I just focused on comfort and pleasure? An example of acknowledgments regarding this dynamic would be, it is true that I have not cared enough to really get involved in the great work. It is true that I have not cared enough to learn technology to the extent that I could assist in the moral education of others, but rather I have simply focused on my own selfishness, on my own creature comforts. Let my care just languish and not actually put skin in the game and get involved. Once again, I'm framing, we could talk about a million different aspects of how people fall short in any areas or endeavors of life. You could see I'm specifically framing this. Like I said in the last section, there's an agenda to this. Whereas I'm posing the really important questions about the really important dynamics. And that's what people have to do with shadow work. This is not about like, did I put in enough hours, that I made enough for a new car this year. This is about the stuff that is of critical importance at this time in human history. And if we don't care enough to get involved and do what we know to be right and what's required, things are just going to go precipitously off of a cliff. So again, I'm framing the dynamics of what I think should be posed in shadow work to what we really need to focus on. Another question that will lead us to a proper acknowledgement is, do I understand the true causal factors at hand? Do you understand causality enough to know what's truly important and what really needs to be done? Through asking ourselves difficult questions during the first stage of shadow work, we must strive to understand true causal factors for both our own behavior and shortcomings, and the true causal factors for the wider condition of humanity. Without a true grasp of the causation for suffering, we stay disempowered to free ourselves from it. An example of a good acknowledgement regarding this dynamic would be, it is true that I have remained ignorant of the true causal factors for my fear of speaking out publicly. See, maybe you want to analyze, why are you afraid of becoming a public figure? Why are you so afraid of speaking publicly? Why are you afraid of putting that skin in the game? Why are you afraid of, speaking knowledge which you happen to possess? Otherwise, how is it going to propagate? So it is true I've remained ignorant of the true causal factors for my fear of speaking out publicly. Maybe you don't even know why you're afraid. Well, why do you play secret agent man, secret agent woman? Continuing this acknowledgement, this ignorance has led me to remain silent and not engage in the battle for freedom that we all face. How many people even ask themselves questions like this? I wonder. I wonder whether people it never even enters their mind. Not once. Versus how many people will sit and ask themselves a question like this and then answer it honestly during a shadow work session. Another question that will lead us to proper acknowledgement, have I made an accurate diagnosis of the problem at hand? Have you gathered enough information that you actually know what the problem is and why it's there? Forget right now about what to do to solve it. Have you diagnosed the problem at all in yourself? Diagnostics means the examination and analysis of a particular system in order to arrive at an accurate understanding of what is causing problems for that system. Again, we could be talking about the individual self. We could be talking about all of humanity as the system. Shadow work helps us to gain a correct understanding of ourselves so that we may come to the correct conclusion regarding the cause of specific problems. Shadow work is about troubleshooting. It's about the analysis of causal factors. This is what most people do not do. They look at just external things and are like, oh, that's just something that's happening. No, it's not. It has a cause. Nothing happens without causation. That's how natural law functions. Everything is operating according to law and principles. And if you don't make accurate diagnostics when problems arise, you don't know the causal factors, and you certainly aren't going to know how to solve the problem. Most people stop short of an accurate diagnosis because they have not acquired enough information on root causes for problems. A good example of an acknowledgement regarding this dynamic would be, it is true that I have not correctly diagnosed the relationship between morality and freedom, and so I do not properly understand what I must do to improve the human condition. See, once again, unless we ask the right questions, we're not going to arrive at what we have to acknowledge. And that's the first step of shadow work. It's posing questions and then being ultra honest about our answers and how we are involved regarding those dynamics. And it's not just for selfish reasons. It's for the big picture. This is what I would encourage people to do shadow work wise. Ask the big picture questions. Like, do I know what the true solution really is? Or do I just think I know? Or am I just comfortable remaining ignorant of what the solution is? Do you really have the key to all of it in hand, to solving human slavery? I know that I do. I don't think that I do. I'm definitively positive about it because there is a real world answer. And it's actually practical, and it's something that you can do something about. It's not something that's unworkable or impossible. Human beings often miss solutions to problems, even when they are right in front of them. This almost always happens due to not having enough information regarding the causal factors in order to make a correct diagnosis. See, that's the step. You get enough information. You actually diagnose the problem according to causal factors, and then you can propose what needs to be done. This ignorance of causal factors and what the solutions are invariably leads to continuing chaos and suffering in all of our lives. But the true solution does exist. But have we developed enough understanding to accept what that solution is? So again, according to the agenda here, folks, here's a good example of an acknowledgement regarding this dynamic. It's true that I've remained ignorant, that the communication of true objective morality is the most important step to ending human slavery. How many people are doing work to actually acknowledge that's the solution? Or how many people are just continuing to float through life? They don't have that knowledge in hand. They don't know what the real solution is, and they're not even asking themselves that question. Hey, you could be really upset that your team lost the championship last year and go through all kinds of diagnostics regarding what the team did wrong. But is that as important as asking how could we end human slavery? And how can you be involved to be a part of that solution? And folks, the answer is readily obvious and available. It's communication and publishing. It's putting information out. Everybody wants to say, oh, I want to do this, or I want to do that, or I want to, tell Mark what solution I think is at hand. And it's like, well, guess what? Put your work out. Get involved in the work. Put the work out into the world. Publish it for all to see widely and freely, and let people partake of your wisdom if you think you know what the solution and the answer is. It doesn't need to be communicated to any one individual. It needs to be put out into the world. So you learn how to do that, and then you do it. You know? How many people on a daily basis write to me, try to call me, try to communicate with me? It's like, the answer doesn't have to go through Mark Passio, number one. Number two, stop playing secret agent and go public and put your knowledge out into the world if you think you have something valuable to contribute. That's the real solution. But people are just armchair quarterbacks, where they're just sitting around being lazy, following creature comfort, not actively getting involved on the battlefield. So here's another question to ask during the first stage of shadow work. Am I just fucking lazy? Am I just a lazy person? Have I been lazy because I just want comfort in my life? I don't want the stirring up and shaking up and having to become a public figure and having to learn technology and having to learn how to publish information and sharing what I know and putting myself out there. That's what I've been doing for the last 18 fucking years, going on 19. It's like, when do I get assistance and help and a break and to tag out? Instead of people saying what I should do. Don't worry about what Mark Passio should do. Worry about what you should fucking do. Laziness is the third of the primary destroyers of human consciousness. Not being willing to take action in the face of tyranny and evil is one of the worst offenses a human being can commit karmically. An example of a good acknowledgement one could make regarding laziness is, it is true that I have been lazy, and I have not done nearly what I could have done to slow the advance of tyranny and evil in this world. I have focused solely on my own needs and selfish desires, and I have not been willing to sacrifice my own comfort to do what I know deep down inside of myself to be right. Just read that again and again, if you have to. How many people just pursue pleasure and comfort and never once get involved in any dynamic or any aspect of this work ever? They're sitting back waiting for something that's never going to happen. So imagine if we're just honest and we ask ourselves the question, is it just me and I'm just fucking lazy and I don't want to get involved and go onto the battlefield? I don't want to put myself out there. I want to remain an anonymous coward and an anonymous lazy person. Here's the acknowledgement. Yes, it's true I've been lazy. I haven't done what I could to help people to understand morality and freedom and slow the advance of slavery in this world. I've just focused on my own selfish desires. How many people just sit and acknowledge that and let that be with themselves in their own thoughts? Most people never even consider it. Do I have the willpower to even begin to change? And what are you doing to develop willpower? Lack of willpower goes hand in hand with laziness and is one of the main reasons chaos and suffering remain the status quo, and slavery. In shadow work, we must be willing to be honest with ourselves regarding our own lack of will to change. We must acknowledge that we say that we want better conditions to manifest, but we have not developed the willpower to do what is necessary and required to make those conditions actually manifest in the world. See, it's all about what we're not doing, folks. We're not getting involved in the battlefield. And it's also all about what we continue to do that's wrong. We're not stopping or telling people that they should stop immoral behaviors. An example of a good acknowledgement regarding the dynamic of that you may not have the willpower that you need is you say to yourself while you're looking in that mirror, is it true that I have not developed the willpower to create real change, neither within myself nor in the world as a whole? You have to be willing to take real world, common sense, right action. This isn't just about wishful thinking or what you want to happen. It's about what are you going to make happen. Do I have the courage to do what I know to be right? Once again, most people want to sit back and be an anonymous coward. How many people go through the length and problem to try to obfuscate their identity? Oh my God, somebody might know your name online. I mean, you gotta be kidding, people. You really do. And it's sad. I don't want to have to be the guy that's constantly telling people that they're just fucking cowards. I want to be around strong, brave fucking warriors ready to do fucking spiritual battle. Not people who want to hide their name in a fucking internet chat. Cowardice is the fourth of the great destroyers of human consciousness. These are the internal enemies within us. We give in to cowardice when we allow our fear of discomfort and pain to override our will to do what we know to be right. Courage is a basic requirement to speak out against tyranny. And tyranny never just goes away on its own. It's spoken out of existence at some point. And if it has to be, it's fought out of existence. But it starts by being spoken out of existence. And too few people are speaking against tyranny and enslavement in our world. And this is why too few people are speaking out. They lack true courage, and they rarely admit this fact to themselves. So an example of a good acknowledgement in the first step of shadow work, while you're looking at yourself in that mirror and you're asking the question, am I really just a fucking anonymous coward? You know, ask yourself, do you have the courage of Mark Passio to speak out? Because I guarantee you, in 99.9% of you, the answer is no, you do not. Here's a good acknowledgement. It's true that I have been cowardly. I have not developed the courage to speak out against the unjust conditions that prevail in our world. I've stayed on the sidelines and I have not gotten involved as a direct result of my own lack of courage. How many people will sit there and say that right to their own face, to themselves in the mirror during the acknowledgement phase of shadow work? Hardly any. And if we're not doing that, if we're not doing that as a movement, if we're not doing that as a species, expect more enslavement and death and chaos and destruction, because that's all you're going to get. And I could say that a billion times. It could be said a quadrillion fucking times. Until you decide that you're going to come out of that state, nothing's going to change. And we got to do this on a world scale, not just on a few people. And we're nowhere fucking near it at all. Not even close. Not even close. It's paltry and pathetic, the numbers. Another question to ask is, have I attempted to advocate my personal responsibility to do what I know to be right? Most people don't want true responsibility. They want to run away from their responsibilities. They don't want the ability to respond to and correct problems in their lives. They want to just blame it on somebody else, and they want to sit there complaining. They naively believe at a subconscious level that they can remain some sort of a cosmic child and abandon their own personal responsibility to someone else. This is what all of politics and government is. This person will take care of it. They'll solve the problem. I don't need to take any real world action. We'll just vote somebody new in, and they're going to be responsible for all the change that has to happen. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And purple unicorns rain down from the sky on a daily basis. You know, you want to talk about dreaming. You want to talk about just wildly lost in the dynamic of dreaming. That's what that is. People try to pass the buck down the line and externalize their power to others instead of developing their power inwardly. A good acknowledgement regarding this dynamic is, it is true that I have attempted to abdicate my personal responsibility to get involved in the war for freedom. Instead of morally educating my fellow human beings, I've tried to convince myself that such work is for others to do, but not me. I don't want that responsibility. Imagine this. It's pathetic and disgraceful. And people need to look themselves in the mirror and acknowledge their shortcomings regarding this, and that they've been a part of this dynamic instead of being on the true right side of the dynamic. Folks, I told you this was going to be intense and difficult for many people to hear. It's all still true. I haven't said anything that's false. Another question in the acknowledgement stage, ask yourself, have I actually taken right and effective action? Look at the action that I've taken and the amount of time and dedication and total and practically complete sacrifice that it takes to do the type of action to create this content and try to put it out into the world for people to understand. Compare what you're doing to something like that. It should be compared. It's a measuring stick. Most human beings most human beings want to sit on the sidelines and imagine life as some type of movie or TV show that they are watching passively on a screen. They take on this mindset because they don't want to sacrifice comfort in their lives in order to take right action. It's far easier to sit on one's ass and watch like a passive observer than it is to get personally involved and put skin in the game and actually do right action by speaking out. Only right action will ever create positive change, no matter how much wishful thinking in which human beings engage. You can engage in all the wishful thinking and all the wishful emotions that there are in the world to partake in, and nothing is going to get accomplished until you actually get on the battlefield and take true right action by trying to morally educate your fellow man and woman. So an example of a good acknowledgement regarding not having taken right action: it's true that I have not engaged in right action with regard to the human condition of slavery. I have definitely not gotten involved to the best of my ability. I have left it all to someone else. That's a good acknowledgement. Sit there, look in your own eyes in the mirror, and say something like that to yourself. And really let it sink the fuck in. That's shadow work, ladies and gentlemen. That's shadow work. Not imagining some nonsense dream in your mind. It's saying, how have you failed? How have you not done what you know you need to be doing? That's shadow work. Some people have to ask themselves even a question as basic as, am I even engaged in any type of right livelihood for the resources that I make? Because I guarantee you there's some people sitting in this group right now that are in right livelihood and do work for government in some capacity or some evil entity in some capacity. I guarantee you not everybody that's even listening or watching this is in right livelihood. Most people do not want to admit that if they are employed by an institution or business that initiates violence, coercion, fraud, or other immoral behavior, that they are themselves complicit in that immoral behavior. If you're helping someone conduct immoral behavior, you're complicit in that behavior yourself. So if you're involved in government, if you're involved in the type of horrendous monetary and banking procedures that are going on in the world today, defrauding people of their property and making the world an even worse place to live in. If you're involved in the bureaucracy of government, if you're involved in tax collection, if you're involved in military, if you're involved in police forces, you're not in right livelihood. You're involved in coercion, you're involved in violence, you're involved in fraud, you're involved in immoral behavior. And there's no excuse for it. Most people just want to do their job for a paycheck and rarely even consider or care at all if what they do to earn that paycheck is truly moral or not. They couldn't give a shit less. This is one of the main reasons immorality prevails in our world, and one of the main reasons our freedom is being destroyed and lost. An example of a good acknowledgement regarding the dynamic of right livelihood is it true? It is true that I have not engaged in right livelihood. By continuing to work in a government agency that regularly engages in coercion, I myself have been supporting and enabling violent and immoral behavior. How about even supporting people that are involved in wrong livelihood? Are you the wife of a cop or a soldier? Is one of your parents involved in government? Are you saying anything to them? Are you trying to morally educate them and get them out of being a part of this sick, violent system? No, most people don't want to rock the boat in their families, and so they just shut up about it. They shut up about all the wrong things. They don't open their mouth about the right things. It's all cowardice, folks. And you can't be easy on people who are in wrong livelihood. You got to say it straight out, right to their face. Have I followed orders that I should not have? How many people have been a part of these agencies and institutions and have followed orders unquestioningly? Believe me, there's plenty of people within the freedom movement that are either active or past cops and soldiers. And basically that makes them trash as human beings. And they don't even open their mouth about the dynamic. Half of them don't even want people to know they were involved. Order followers are those who have done what they have been commanded to do. That's what an order follower is. Someone who has done what they have been commanded to do through some order giver's command, without first correctly judging for themselves whether or not the action they were ordered to perform is objectively right or wrong. They just remove that discernment from their mind and say, I'm doing this for a paycheck. Whatever you say to do, yes, sir, I'll carry out the order. And there's no bigger piece of trash than that. Living or dead. There's no bigger piece of trash. Get as fucking offended as you want. It will never make this statement untrue. It's true eternally and forever. And definitively exactly true. Any individual who is following orders cannot be exercising conscience, since exercising conscience means willfully choosing for themselves right action over wrong action through their discernment based upon the knowledge, the objective knowledge of the difference between moral versus immoral behavior. You have to first acquire that knowledge and then align your behavior to it. These people aren't doing that. They don't even know the difference between right and wrong, let alone are they willfully discerning and choosing right over wrong. They're choosing evil over what is right just because they make a paycheck doing it. And like I said, you can't get any lower. You can't become any lower fucking scum than that. And then people will say, they'll make excuses for these people saying they're just doing their job. No, they're not. They're making a willful fucking choice to do something that they have no right to do. And that's follow somebody else's commands just because they're making money to do it. When they don't even know or care about whether what they're doing, what they're being ordered to do is right or wrong. They couldn't give any shit less. So you can take my words and shove them up your ass and spin on them. It's still true, nonetheless. These sick, demented order followers have foolishly attempted to abdicate their personal moral responsibility to someone else, saying, oh yeah, it's the order giver. Oh, I don't worry about that. I just do my job. That's the whole fucking problem of this godless fucking world, man. That's the whole fucking problem in a nutshell. Since order followers are the people who actually perform an ordered action with their own body, they are the people who have actually brought harm upon others into physical manifestation, not the order giver. The order giver can't do that unless he uses his body to carry out his own order. Instead, these jackasses follow their orders and then harm other people when they have no right to do so on the command of another. So order followers themselves have ultimately been personally responsible and morally culpable for every form of slavery and every single solitary totalitarian regime that has ever existed upon the face of this earth. Get the fuck offended as you want. It's going to be true eternally and forever. And if you don't understand that that's the dynamic, you're part of the fucking problem. All the assholes out there who say, oh, it's a person giving the orders, it's the politician. You're a smacked ass. A smacked ass if that's what you believe. And I've heard some people that should definitively know better making dumb fucking statements like that. And you know what? It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't advance yourself. It doesn't help anybody else in the world. It doesn't contribute to freedom. You're doing harm. You're doing harm by taking that mentation and not changing it. Here's some more order followers in the medical industry that came out during COVID like rabid beasts. And then people want to say they're not some of the biggest fucking pieces of trash ever to walk the earth. You don't know what you think you know, all the people out there in the so-called medical industry. You're fucking just as ignorant as all the other order-following trash out there. And guess what? I'll say it just as harshly right that. Come and see me, I'll say it right to your fucking face. These are the order followers out there in the world, and there's many more variants of them. And in shadow work, you got to ask yourself, am I just a piece of trash scumbag order follower who just wants to do what I'm ordered to do just so I make fucking money and stay comfortable? Because that's where almost most people are at. They're following some form of orders. They're afraid to speak out. They're afraid to step out of line. They're just fucking scumbag fucking cowards. A good example of a proper acknowledgement regarding order following is this. It is true that I have followed orders that I should not have followed. I have attempted to abdicate my personal responsibility to choose my own actions based on the objective difference between right and wrong under natural law. I have been an immoral person for doing this. Then maybe people can forgive you. But acknowledge that you're a piece of trash first, and then commit to changing from being a piece of trash to being an actual good person. How many people are willing to do that? Not that many. That's why we're in the bad situation that we're in this world. And not that many people will say it straight to them in street language and say it right to their fucking face. You got to get intense about it. You got to say what's true. You got to say what you know to be right. You got to say what you know to be moral. And you got to put it in people's face. You can't just let it slide. Here's a question very few people ever think to ask. Have I actually been involved in poisoning the worldview of others with false ideas? How much do what you have spoken and put out into the world is actually a false worldview and poisons the worldview of other people, especially the young? Sowing falsity and confusion could well be one of the worst things we can ever do. Hey, folks, this is why I feel I accrued the most karma that I ever accrued in my entire life. Not because I did violent behaviors, but because I propagated false ideas and poisoned people's worldviews with what I propagated when I was involved in Satanism. That's what brought the most negative karma down upon my spirit and soul and in my life. Worldview poisoning was what I was the most guilty of since I've been alive. And again, in my youth, I did that. And I came out of it fully by the time I was in my late 20s and early 30s. Thank God. Thank God I was able to work on myself to that extent that I stopped poisoning people's minds with completely sick, twisted, demented ideas and worldview poisoning. So when you sow such falsity and confusion, it could be one of the worst things we can ever do because we propagate deception and suppress truth as a result of poisoning other people's worldview. An example of a good acknowledgement regarding worldview poisoning is this. It is true that I have poisoned the worldview of others through my ignorance. See, this is what I had to say when I was doing the shadow work coming out of the satanic mindset. This is one I had to wrestle with continuously. Look at how much I put out into the world that was false and how much damage that is going to do to people's lives. It's true that I have poisoned the worldview of others through my ignorance. I have spread false ideas, and this has resulted in harm to others and has diminished the reception of truth in our world. When you poison the worldview of others, you make it more difficult for them to receive the truth and to heal themselves and to help heal the world. So worldview poisoning is one of the worst offenses that you could possibly do. It's spinning that vicious spider web in the mind and keeping people trapped there. So this is a very powerful and important dynamic that has to be addressed in shadow work. Now, I hope people are seeing how much different my shadow work methodology than anything you've ever previously seen. It is not the same thing. Me and the New Age community, never the twain shall meet. We are not the same in any aspect or respect. They're preaching false clown world spirituality. I'm preaching the real fucking shit is what's happening. Okay? Get the difference, understand the difference, and live the difference. And maybe you'll make some progress in life and help the world. Maybe. And we can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. You could ask a billion questions. You could go into a billion forms of inadequacy. Again, I'm not here to present every single solitary question that exists and have you analyze one at a time. I'm here to Again, give some examples, whet the appetite, get you to understand. You got to grok the concept. You got to conceptually understand what needs to be done. It isn't about saying that you just write out step 1 and then do step 1 and then write out step 2 and then do that. No, it's about get the concept, folks. The concept is king. You ask the hard questions. You acknowledge the truth about the hard questions to yourself, right to your own face, looking at yourself, and say it aloud. So we can go on and ask all kinds of questions that lead to an acknowledgement of what needs to be focused on and changed. Have I been kind and patient with those who I should have been kind and patient with? Not everybody really deserves kindness and patience. Some people have really earned impatience and getting really on their up in their mug about something because of how much they've done the wrong thing. But some people do deserve patience. So have I been kind and patient with those who I should have been kind and patient with? We should ask that. Have I used my resources wisely, or have I used them frivolously? Have I been thankful enough for the blessings that I do have? I try to do this one every day. I try to recommit to, I want to express an attitude of gratitude and be thankful for the blessings that I have received. Absolutely. That's one that I have to do every day. Have I complained about others' work while I have put forward nothing? Oh, there's plenty who are guilty of that one. There's plenty who need lots of shadow work about that one. Who think they have every right to complain while they've sat on their lazy fucking ass for the whole life and not put any work out into the world, and then you want to complain? Go fuck yourself. How about that for shadow work? There's your action item. You know, if you want to sit back and complain while you have no work of your own, go fuck yourself. Have I truly listened? Really listened? Instead of just hearing what I want to hear? Because plenty of people are guilty of that one too. They hear what they want to hear. They don't hear what's actually being said because they're poor fucking listeners. Have I actually passed on my knowledge to others to propagate it and keep it alive in the world? There's plenty of people who need to do plenty of shadow work about all these dynamics, folks, and much more. But again, we could go on and on and on. Ultimately, acknowledgement is all about saying to yourself, I was wrong. There's the magic statement. There's the magic decree. That's the magic declaration. You got to get that in your vocabulary, and you got to keep saying it to yourself over and over and over and over and over again. Or you're not making any progress in shadow work or helping anybody, including yourself. The most powerful 3-word phrase we could ever say to ourselves or to others is, I was wrong. When the human ego begins to grow out of control, human beings become less and less able to admit or acknowledge when they have been wrong. When the ego goes out of control, and that's what Satanism is. And when the ego goes out of control, people are less and less able to admit they have condoned the immoral behavior of others. These are people who think, I am proud of the order followers in the police and military. They protect us. No, you're condoning immoral behavior. If you even think government should exist, you're condoning immoral behavior. You don't even understand what you're advocating for philosophically if you're that dumb. The very first stage of shadow work, acknowledgement, is all about working upon ourselves with brutally honest introspection, so that we can acknowledge to ourselves the ways in which we have been wrong. And you know what, folks? People want to say anything they want to say about me, how I speak, what I say, how harsh I am. I've done this work over and over and over and over and over again endlessly. Still do it today. Most people have never even engaged it for a microsecond of their worthless, miserable fucking lives. That's the truth of the matter. They can't admit that they're wrong because their ego's in the way. And they think they know when they don't. They need a lot more study. They need a lot more humbleness and humility. And they need a lot more saying, I was wrong, to themselves, in the mirror, during shadow work, and to other people. To admit that you were wrong is to declare that you are wiser now than you were before. And this is all I did every day for years coming out of Satanism. And not to say that I don't need to admit that I'm wrong sometimes now. But you know what? It's a lot easier to say I was wrong because I've done that previous shadow work. Most people have never done it a second in their lives, and they can't say the words I was wrong. And that's what's going to keep you stagnant. That's what is going to keep you not evolving. That's what's going to keep slavery in place. That's what's going to lead to further total degradation and destruction. Bank on it. I told people how bad things were going to get before COVID happened, and then it happened, and everybody's like, oh, he was telling people he was prophetic. No, I was seeing the handwriting on the wall of where human consciousness was leading us because it was in a state of trash condition. And it's no better now than it was then, and it's going to get worse. Unless and until we learn how to do this work on ourselves and then teach other people to do it. Step 2 of the AAA methodology, affirmation. And again, I highlight or I underline the word firm because we are trying to build a firm foundation. You are trying to build firmness in your resolve. That's what this step is all about. Building a firm foundation and firmness in your resolve and commitment to act. That's what this is all about. So let's look at how this dynamic works. So again, you're going to do this aloud and in the mirror. So when you're preparing for shadow work, you understand the conceptual ideas. You set the set and the mindset and the setting. Sit down in front of a mirror. If you don't have one, use your own webcam on your computer or your laptop. There's a good mirror. Okay? You could place that anywhere on a desk, turn the camera on, point it at your face, and say what you need to say to yourself. And here's what you do in step 2. Step 2 of the AAA shadow work methodology is affirmation. In this second stage of shadow work, we will strive to gain an accurate understanding. Again, it's aligned with the trivium. The first is knowledge and saying outright and honestly what the facts are. The second step is you have to try to gain an understanding of the knowledge that you spoke in part 1. You stated the knowledge in part 1. Now you have to gain an understanding. You have to understand the why that it's there and how to go about correcting it. And then in step 3, you actually do the correction. So, we'll strive to gain an understanding of what we must actually do to improve ourselves and to begin to understand the specifics of how we must change. This is where you are learning the dynamics of how you need to better yourself and improve. If performed correctly, the step of affirmation, we will begin to grasp the types of action that we must take to address the shortcomings and inadequacies that were revealed in the acknowledgement stage, step 1. Finally, during step 2 affirmation, we will make a full commitment to bringing that action into manifestation in our lives. And again, just like all good acknowledgements begin with, it is true that I, ... fill in the blank. All good affirmations begin with the phrase, I will, ... fill in the blank. I will do this about this dynamic. I will take these actions. You're not doing those things yet. You're committing to doing them. That's why it's an affirmation. It's the formulation of a deep commitment to action before doing the action. In the first step, you're saying how you're wrong. In the second step, you're saying, I will correct this. In the third step, you make the correction. And then that could sound like, oh my God, that's so common sense. It's almost stupid. It's so simple, it's silly. Yeah, that's my point. And most people never do this, not even for 1 second. When it's pure, elegant simplicity, but no one said it was easy. It's still difficult to do. It's difficult work to do. But it's very simplistic and elegant in its simplicity. So let's look at some different dynamics of the affirmation dynamic of shadow work. The first thing to understand about affirmation is understanding what truly effective affirmations are. So there's ways that you could affirm something that are terrible, that are bad ways of going about doing it, and they're not best practices. And then there are other ways you could affirm something that are absolutely the best way of going about doing it and best practices. And that's what I delineate in my work. I don't want to teach you half-ass methods. I want to teach you the best methods available. So it should be noted that good affirmations are about firmly committing to positive change, not wishy-washy, alleged commitment. Not just say, oh, maybe I'll do this. I could do this, if I rearrange some things. Maybe I'll do this. I might. Screw all that language. You have to say firmly and with definitive commitment, I will. And no one will stop me. I will do this. That's it. That's it. You have to get it into your mind that you will do it and then exert your willpower to do it. And folks, hey, I get anybody can say something like that. But again, how many people are actually saying it and trying to teach it to people and instill it in people? See, this is what parenting should have done. All the parents out there that shat out a kid, just shat one right out, and then they don't want to teach their kid any good habits. This is the problem. And then they leave it to spiritual teachers to teach their own fucking children what they should have taught them as a parent. And then people want to wonder why I'm a little bit bitter, why I'm a little bit annoyed. I don't want 8 fucking billion children on my hands. I want to take care of myself and improve myself and not worry about having to get on 8 billion fucking psychological children. Because that's what most people out there are. True affirmations are not about claiming what is possible. Oh, that could happen. What might happen, or what you think you should do. It's not about what you think is possible. I can do that. Well, great for fucking you. You can. Are you actually gonna? Anybody can do anything. It's like in Seinfeld. Oh, I took the reservation. I don't think you understand what taking a reservation means. It means the car should be here. Anybody can just take a reservation out of the blue. One of my favorite Seinfeld scenes. But did you really understand the assignment? Did you do it? Affirmations are about telling yourself what you will do. They're about laying a solid and firm foundation for positive change by firmly stating what you are going to make happen by an act of your will, even if you don't currently know how. You do not need to know how the affirmation will work out or how what you are saying you're going to do will be carried out in the future. You don't need to currently know that to make an affirmation. So, a poor example of an affirmation would look like this. It might be possible for me to learn how to make a video explaining the immorality of government. Maybe I could do that. I might be able to figure it out. That's a shit affirmation, quite frankly. Okay? That's not how you want to commit to right behavior. You don't want to do it in wishy-washy terms. Maybe if I have enough time next year, I'll start learning how to make a podcast and then put out information about natural law to people. Garbage affirmation. Here's a good affirmation. I will learn how to create videos that I will publish online that will teach others about the immorality of government. There's a great affirmation. You see the difference in quality? Do you see the difference in commitment? Do you see the difference in passion? Do you see the difference in energy? You have to get passionate and confirm. Again, affirm, confirm. Standing on a solid, firm foundation of what you are going to do, what you're going to make happen. Not what you're going to wishy-washily wish will happen. Anybody can do that. I'll take a bunch of reservations for the cars and then not keep the car at the rental place. There's wishy-washy behavior, just like people make wishy-washy affirmations. I will do this and nothing will stop me. That's a good affirmation. That's how an affirmation should sound and work. So let's look at some examples. Make a proper affirmation to heal your own worldview. Because again, every section begins with this. It all begins and ends with worldview, ladies and gentlemen. If the worldview isn't healed, the individual cannot heal, and certainly the world doesn't heal without healing worldview. That will never happen. That's something that is impossible. If you think you're going to heal yourself and the world without first healing worldview, forget it. Forget it. You got to know what human nature is. You got to know how change comes about. You got to know that it's possible. You got to know how to commit and affirm to true change. And then you got to do what you know to be right. Stop following orders. Stop even condoning people who are involved in or believe in government. That's all part of the worldview change that needs to happen. And that's part of the paradigm shift in consciousness that hasn't happened. That was allegedly projected coming around in the year 2000 or 2012. Well, where the fuck was it? It didn't happen. We went deeper into bondage. We went deeper into chains. We went deeper into slavery. Not further away from it. Because people have become wishy-washy, anonymous fucking cowards sitting there flinging, doom scrolling on their fucking phone instead of actually making real-world content that they could propagate to the masses of people to morally educate them. If personal healing through shadow work does not begin with healing one's own poison worldview, then it will rarely proceed beyond that point. We must put aside the erroneous worldview that both religion and politics push upon us, that human nature is inherently bad, and that we must have external control forced upon us through these institutions. We must heal our worldview to fully grasp that human nature is simply a programmable and changeable state. The degree to which it will change is entirely dependent upon the quality of information with which we program ourselves. A good affirmation regarding the dynamic to heal one's own worldview is this: I will heal my worldview to the extent that I fully realize that change is possible if we work hard enough to meet the necessary requirements. Do you see how that affirmation works out? You're telling yourself you're going to do this. I'm going to heal my worldview. I will understand what human nature really is. I will teach it to other people. I will understand that change is absolutely possible, and I will propagate that to other people. I won't continue poisoning worldview. Make an affirmation in the second stage of shadow work to stop putting others you care about on a pedestal. I talked about this in the last section, and this is the work to actually make an affirmation to stop doing it. Don't put anybody on a pedestal. We should all be equal in our rights, and nobody should be looked up to as more than or less than anybody else. Much of what we believe about ourselves, our capabilities, and our potential exists in a story in our minds that came from other people. We're telling ourselves false stories all the time in our minds, and they're not even our own. We didn't even invent these stories. They came from other dumb motherfuckers that think they know better and think, oh, we're the propagators of conventional wisdom. Well, what the fuck has that done? What has it accomplished in this world? What has it achieved? What has it made better? Goose fucking egg is what it's made better. It's made the whole world worse for the telling of these bullshit stories. And now they're just bouncing around in people's heads rent-free. They're telling themselves all kinds of bullshit stories. And these come from other people, often the people who were around us early in our lives, like parents, teachers, family members, friends, etc. We must make an affirmation to release the image of ourselves that we previously allowed others who we cared about to create in our minds. They created these images of ourselves in our minds and what our potential and capabilities are, not us. So an affirmation like that involves realizing that the opinions and evaluations of others regarding our characteristics and abilities are often completely misperceived and flat out wrong. They're just stupid. They're just not accurate. Their perceptions are just skewed and flat out incorrect. And once again, it doesn't mean you need to totally lose complete respect for any person that ever did that, but you can't put them up on a pedestal and say things like they did the best they could. No, they didn't. They failed at doing the best they could. If they did the best they could, they would have programmed with correct information, not bullshit stories that aren't true about how the world works when they don't know shit about it. You don't know balls about how the world works. So you should shut the fuck up and stop programming your kid with doom images about their own capabilities and what's possible in the world, because you don't know a fucking thing about it. So just shut the fuck up and listen and take in the truth about it from sources that do understand how those dynamics work, because they're actually learned individuals, unlike ignoramuses like yourself. That's what you got to say to parents. Get the fuck out of the way of the truly intelligent who are trying to change things for the actual better. Half of the people who shit out kids are just dumb motherfuckers that don't know how one thing in life works. They don't even have any life skills. Oh, they could shit out a kid real good, though. Stop putting parents, teachers, people in the media, whatever, clergy members on a fucking pedestal. It does no good for anybody. It damages the world even further. Through shadow work, we learn to stop putting people we care about on a pedestal just because we care about them. We must realize the unfortunate truth that we often allow our view of ourselves to be molded by others' perceptions and expectations. Our view of ourselves is molded by their bullshit. This leads us to diminish our own ability to self-actualize and to become the best version of ourselves, because we're believing their bullshit story that they programmed based on their programming that was done to them by somebody else. And on the fucking bullshit and abuse cycle goes. A good affirmation regarding this dynamic is this: I will stop putting my parents on a pedestal. They have incorrectly evaluated my abilities and potential. I have allowed their incorrect assessment to hold me back from the achievement of my full potential as a human being. Just read that again. Really sink this one in, folks. This is ultra important. Listen to this affirmation and its quality and its intent and its passion. I will stop putting my parents up on a pedestal. They have incorrectly evaluated my abilities and potential. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I have allowed their incorrect assessment to hold me back from the achievement of my full potential as a human being. More powerful words have scarcely ever been written. How many people have ever said that to themselves or even thought it? Yeah. And people want to wonder why the world's going to hell in a handbasket at 1,000,000 miles an hour, because people aren't doing any of this introspection at all. Or if they're doing it at all, they're doing it half-assed. How about an affirmation to truly yourself become holistically intelligent? Again, the real way to become conscious and aware is true holistic intelligence. It's not about engaging in one aspect of the brain and the mind or the other. It's about combining them into one holistic understanding. So intelligence isn't intellect alone, the masculine dynamics of the mind, like logic and science and math and analytical thought. That's only half of the equation. Nor is just creativity or nurturing, compassion or intuition or big picture thinking, correlative thought. That's not the whole factor that creates intelligence. Those are the feminine qualities of the mind. Real holistic intelligence is the combining and coming together of both of these dynamics, the masculine and the feminine, the intellect and the creativity and intuition. And this is not the Star of David or even the Seal of Solomon. This is the chalice and the blade coming together. The male and female combining in the chemical wedding that really illuminates the mind. So that's what real holistic intelligence is. How many people make an affirmation or a commitment in their own lives to stop dwelling in one form of brain imbalance or another? And folks, I see it in the people who joined up for this seminar. I see all kinds of brain imbalance in them. Holistic intelligence is definitely still somewhat scarce and more than an arm's reach away. I don't want to have to say that, but when I see some of the things people do and say and think, it's like, whoa, we are so far the fuck away from where we need to be. It's a joke. It's a bad joke. So make an affirmation to actually turn on the fire within the mind and become really intelligent, truly intelligent. A dumb person can become a smart person. It's true. An ignorant person can actually become a truly holistically intelligent person if they work hard enough at it That is possible. You are not committed permanently to remaining ignorant. With all the information that exists in the world, the ways that you could reprogram your mind and your consciousness and your intelligence is unlimited. It's your laziness that keeps you from doing it. Holistic intelligence results from the balance of the brain hemispheres. It's part of where it comes from. Not entirely, but this is one of the dynamics that you have to heal if you're going to really become holistically intelligent and maintain holistic intelligence. You have to have brain balance between the hemispheres of the brain. Cohesive synergy between both hemispheres, meaning you're using all parts of the mind, not just some or another. So holistic intelligence results from the balance of the brain hemispheres, achieving the elevation of both intellect and creativity. This is true spiritual intelligence, also known as common sense. That's another word we could call, phrase that we could call holistic intelligence. It's common sense. That's why there's so little of it in the world. Most people don't have common sense. They're not holistically intelligent. And common sense defeats ignorance, the first of our four primary destroyers of human consciousness and freedom. If you don't have common sense, you're allowing consciousness and freedom to be destroyed. A good affirmation regarding the dynamic to become holistically intelligent is this: I will develop holistic intelligence. I will develop the kind of big picture thinking that is critical to the manifestation of true freedom. Understanding causal factors, gathering enough data and knowledge, truly understanding it by poring through that and making critical assessments through logic, and then doing the right thing with what you have come to know and understand. That's all holistic intelligence and common sense. And that's why so few people have those dynamics active and awake and on fire within them. Make an affirmation to gather the information required for true understanding. How many people even go out in search of the correct knowledge? Or how many people just formulate their bullshit opinions based on their own feelings and aren't actually researching and doing data gathering? One of the main factors that prevents true understanding from overcoming ignorance and confusion is believing that you know enough to take action when you don't. When you have not even yet gathered enough information in order to develop a deep understanding on any particular topic or issue. You haven't gathered the grammar. This is why I said in section 1, a little learning is a dangerous thing. You can't learn a little bit or go by your emotions or intuition alone. You have to gather huge bodies of data and pour through them and deeply understand them before you ever commit to rhetoric or action. We must affirm to stop putting rhetoric or action before grammar, knowledge, and logic, which is understanding. You can't put action before knowledge and understanding. The trivium doesn't work that way, and neither does life. A good affirmation regarding this dynamic to first gather the information required for true understanding is this: I will gather the necessary information to understand true objective morality and to understand what I must do to communicate it to others. I will gather that grammar. I will gather that knowledge. I will understand the truth regarding those things, and then I will act upon them in that order, in the order of the trivium. How many people ever make any kind of a commitment to like that, to the truth and to knowledge and to information gathering and true understanding? Most people never speak that to themselves for 1 second, not 1 instant. Most people have never thought about it for an instant. And that's why most people don't have the information that they need. They're acting before they've gathered the necessary grammar and before they've actually understood it. That's taking the trivium completely upside down, out of order. And you do that, what's going to result? Good things or chaos? Connected with true holistic intelligence and information gathering, we have to activate heart-based intelligence. Once again, intelligence, holistic intelligence isn't even just about the brain. That's why I said it's not just about that. You have to combine it with care. And I'm talking about agape care. I'm not talking about loving somebody else. I'm talking about loving the truth. I'm talking about loving freedom. I'm talking about loving what is right. But first of all, you have no commitment or relationship with anybody else if there's not first that dynamic with anybody involved in the relationship with truth and with freedom and with right and with the Creator. That commitment has to come first, one to one, and then there can be a connection between people to form an actual relationship. So we have to make an affirmation to develop true agape care, cosmic care. True care, cosmic care, also called agape, is a state of consciousness in which an individual fully realizes the fundamental oneness of humanity. All consciousness, really. It's the end of separation consciousness and the understanding that there's only consciousness and we are an aspect of it. And you have to care about what is right and true in order for consciousness to evolve and grow. That's it. That's agape. In all the major occult mystery traditions, this form of love was expressed via the understanding that, quote unquote, as long as anyone is suffering, we are all suffering. This was the mystery tradition knowledge of particularly what they referred to as the second degree of the mysteries. When you were entered into the mysteries, you had to learn about the importance of knowledge. But when you went into the second degree of the mystery, so the first degree was called being entered. Usually you are an entered apprentice. You are apprenticing in your knowledge gathering. And you're being shown how to gather knowledge eclectically. That's the first step of the trivium process. The second stage is you have to understand how you have to apply that knowledge before applying it. And you have to develop agape care in that stage. And this was the hardest barrier to pass in the mystery school teachings and traditions because most people didn't have that firm commitment to truth, to true love, to true care, and to freedom and the expansion of consciousness. They just wanted things for themselves. Again, worldview. Worldview, the healing of worldview takes place in the heart. And that's why this was almost an impenetrable barrier, the second degree of the mystery traditions. And when you finally did make it to that stage, it was called that you passed. That was the real test. Could you display agape, cosmic care? And that's why attaining the second degree was called you have passed. You have passed to the second degree. You enter, and then you pass, and then you become a master in the third degree because now you're actually taking action. That you have the knowledge and you understand what needs to be done, and now you become a master. You master yourself and your passions and skills and instincts by actually doing the behavior. Folks, what does this sound like? This sounds mysteriously like shadow work. I don't know. Maybe it is. This is what the actual occult mystery traditions were trying to teach people for thousands and thousands of years. And look at where it got us. Because people didn't take it seriously enough, not enough people actually engaged in it and kept the traditions alive, and now it's got us, the remnants of it are old men's clubs, and the whole world's on the precipice of complete annihilation and tyranny and enslavement. That's why we need a rediscovery of those principles. We need a revival of occult principles and a revival of these mystery traditions. The second degree question was, how do you know that you're suffering? And the answer is, as long as anyone is suffering, I am suffering. As long as anyone is suffering, all are suffering. That's agape care. This is the spirit through which we are empowered to defeat apathy, the second of the primary destroyers